Hey, welcome back to the Video Game Brothers. It's been a while since we've had a video. That's Brother Phil. I'm Brother Andy. We are pumped for garage sale season, which is not here yet. We're getting close, but around here the weather really needs to warm up, and it just hasn't. It's still
the snow hasn't even melted yet.
I know. So we got another month or so, I would say, before the season really begins. So, Brother Phil, how many days until garage sale season?
48.
Okay, there it is.
Made up that number, actually.
Oh.
And I'm going to get tons of footage, and I'm going to find 3 Earthbounds this year.
3?
Yeah.
You heard it here first.
Yeah.
Going to beat last year's record. That's got to be a record.
It's got to be.
Has anyone ever found more than 2 copies of Earthbound in a single garage sale season?
I don't know.
That's got to be a record.
It's got to be.
I don't know.
I'm sure. Maybe I'm tied with somebody else for that record. I don't know, but yeah, I can't imagine anyone's ever found 3.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that would be like, I don't know, Fernando Tatis hitting 2 grand slams in 1 inning. I mean, I guess somebody might do that again someday, but no one is ever going to break that record. No, I mean, not ever. Yeah, hit us up on Patreon. Patreon?
This episode is brought to you by ExpressVPN. I'm going to talk about that for the next 60 seconds.
We don't have a Patreon account. I don't even really understand exactly what that is, but
it's e-bagging. I actually don't have a problem with e-bagging. I don't have a problem with it. Look,
I don't know.
If I can figure out a way to sit here in front of them and talk about video games and make a living and not have a job, other than that,
right.
Look, I would do it. Oh, Metal Jesus e-bagged to get his basement fixed. Who cares? Honestly, if I can figure out a way to just go on camera and ask people for money and then have them give me money, are you kidding me?
So we wanted to do a video between now and garage sale season just to kind of fill the void a little bit. And
People miss us too, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I both really love old video game magazines, and I used to subscribe to like 3 or 4 of them at a time back in the day, back in the 90s, and I still love them. I love flipping through them. I got a big stack here. I got a bunch more at home. I just brought a few. Here's the thing about Nintendo Power. Nintendo was legitimately concerned back in the day that these games were too hard for kids, and that kids were going to start playing these games, and they were just kind of rage quit, and before that term was ever even coined, they were going to quit and stop buying games. And I think it was a valid concern, especially when you had games like Ninja Gaiden and the first Metroid, which did not have a built-in map at all. They made the phone line, the gameplay counselor line, to help people. And I was reading Howard Phillips did a Reddit AMA about a year ago, and he said that Nintendo Power Magazine was created in part to alleviate some of that workload from the gameplay counselor's hotline, because they were getting so many calls, and they wanted another way to publish tips and maps and tricks and all that.
That's interesting. Yeah. I think we had it since the first issue. Do we have the first issue here?
This is it right here.
First issue of Nintendo Power. Now, this cannot be our original one.
It is.
How is the cover still on there?
I don't know. I guarantee you it is. I've had it all these years.
Okay.
I mean, it's in horrible condition. It's beat to shreds.
The map.
I mean, look at this map,
Zelda
for crying
map.
out loud. It falls out. It's taped together by Scotch tape. I don't even...
It looks like an ancient relic.
Yeah, this is something that Indiana Jones would find in a cave somewhere. But I mean, some of the pages are ripped. I mean, you can see we use this a lot for Zelda, because this is the section that's...
Now, this is the second quest of Zelda. When you get the Triforce, you beat the bad guy, you get the Triforce, you don't get the Triforce, even though it's there.
Up until then, every level... You beat the boss, and then you go up and get the Triforce, and so you're trained to do that. No one would ever think, oh...
Walk through the wall. Don't bomb it.
Wall.
Walk through straight up, and that will lead you to the raft, which you obviously need later in the game. You cannot progress without the raft. Without this issue of Nintendo Power, is there anybody in the world that just figured this out on their own? You're in the room with the Triforce, and you're like... I'm not going to get the Triforce. I'm just going to see what happens if I walk straight up.
This is why we needed Nintendo Power. Pre-internet, how could anyone beat Metroid without that map in there? How could anybody beat... I mean, I remember... Here's a great example. see this one right here? I called Nintendo up. I was stuck on Metroid 2 on Game Boy. And I was talking to the guy, and he was like, do you subscribe to Nintendo Power? And I was like, yes, of course I subscribe to Nintendo Power. And he goes, okay, get the Lemmings issue out. So I looked in and I find this one. He's got Lemmings on the front. And I said, I'm asking for tips about Metroid 2. I don't care about Lemmings. But he said, get this issue, and then turn to page whatever it is, and there is a complete map of the entire game that will walk you through every part of it. And I was like, thank you.
I remember when we discovered
I don't know how... And I ended up beating this game like 3 times, just going through it with the issues. We lived in Seattle as kids, so the gameplay counselor number was not long distance for us. And so we called it all. They got tired of... I remember one guy telling me to get it off speakerphone because he was getting frustrated because like me and
we
like
had it on
a couple of our friends...
885-7529.
Yeah, 885 play. We called a lot. But between that and Nintendo Power, we never got lost on a game. I mean, they knew everything. I remember calling on games like Deja Vu and Shadowgate and those sort of point-and-click puzzle-y games, and was like, they knew instantly.
Well, I think a big part of the reason that they knew that they had instant answers to all the questions we asked is because the reason, I mean, we were stuck at this part of this game, which means there's a million other people that were also stuck there.
Yeah.
And so they got the same questions over and over again.
Yeah.
The moment you said the uninvited, in their minds are like, oh, I know what he's going to ask.
Yep.
He's stuck right here.
These 80s mustache dads.
Every gameplay counselor had a mustache. This is hilarious. I have a memory of calling the gameplay counselor because I was actually stuck in Zelda 2. And I don't know why I was stuck in Zelda 2 because we had all the maps. And the reason I was stuck is because I didn't have a key, and I had to have a key to proceed. And I just called Mama, where do I get this key? And instead of telling me where to get a key, he just said, ferry through the keyhole. If I turn into a fairy, you can go right through the keyhole. You don't even need a key.
You need a key.
That was mind-blowing for me when he told me that. Wizards and Warriors. Where do I find the red key in the lava stage? The red key in that lava stage is so hard to get. I don't know why they made it so difficult. You had to find a bubble, ride it all the way up, jump to the left at a very precise moment in order to make that landing. Otherwise, you just roll down that hill or get a pink potion, which makes you go really fast. But even then, it's kind of just a cluster. You just... Do you remember that?
I do. So right around the early 90s, maybe 92, 93, I started to branch out into other magazines because Nintendo Power, like I said, it kind of seemed like propaganda to me after a while. I got EGM and GamePro and Game Players and what else was there? Next Generation.
Yeah,
and
Next Gen.
I got to the point where I had all these systems and I was like, I don't want to limit myself to one... Nintendo or Sony magazine. Yeah. I was like, I want something that covers everything. So I started buying all these. These things are like opening a time capsule for me. Like, it stays the same year after year. You go to IGN's website and it changes every day. It's like
changes every minute.
Yeah. The first one is from EGM with Beavis and Butthead on the cover. It doesn't get much more 90s. There's a review of a Zelda game. It's a positive review. Listen to this. Plenty of weapons, a lengthy quest, and lots of enemies to keep you busy will appeal to your sense of adventure for weeks to come. Wow. A terrific game for Zelda fans.
Oh, this is Zelda's Adventure.
For CDI. Yeah.
EGM gave a positive review.
You care
a glowing review at that.
Terrific game? You care to explain yourselves, EGM? This is
what?
This is widely acknowledged as like the worst Zelda game of all time. And it's not. I mean, I get Wand of Gamelon. I don't know. I think they're both similar games, but they're trash. I mean, nobody likes them. How on earth did this? I can't figure this out. I don't know.
It's like they thought, oh, it's a Zelda game, and then they just wrote the review.
Like they didn't even play it.
Yeah, they didn't even play it, and they're like, it's got to be good.
Yeah,
we don't have time to play it.
A terrific Zelda game? GamePro is infamous for, I mean, they were fast and loose with their 5.0 reviews. I mean, I can get to some of those in a minute. It's astonishing. They gave Shaq Fu a positive review. I mean, are you kidding me?
Hold on, was Aero Fighters on the Genesis?
That's one of those, like, chips and bits, like, mail-order stores.
I think so. For those of you that don't know, Aero Fighters might be the most expensive Super Nintendo game. in the rarest, and I found it at a garage sale last year.
Yep.
Just throw that out there.
Go back and watch those videos.
It's all on YouTube's.
So there's one in this issue of Next Generation from February of 1999. So almost exactly 20 years ago. Top 50 games of all time. Right? It's really interesting. And actually, you know what? In this one, they lumped games into a series, which I don't really agree with. But, like, number 1 is Zelda the series. But then they weren't really consistent, because number 7 is Super Mario Kart on Super Nintendo. Why not the series? What happened to the N64 Mario Kart?
There were 2 Mario Kart games at that point.
At that time, there were 2 Mario Karts. So they weren't even really consistent with it. Number 10 is GoldenEye on N64. Number 20 is Wave Race on N64. That's the 20th best game of all time. I understand this was 1999, but I don't know, man. That's hard to...
Galaga? I don't know.
Number 17,
yeah.
Galaga.
Gran Turismo, I like that choice. I was a big fan of that series.
Gran Turismo is awesome. Final Fantasy, the series, is number 16.
At that point, most of the Final Fantasy games were great. In my opinion, they kind of went south after,
In 1999, I mean, yeah, we're talking basically 1 through 9 at that point. So, or 8. I'm sorry. 8. Yeah, 8 made the cover. So there you go. Number 14 is Half-Life. 13, Resident Evil, the series. 12, Tekken, the series. 11, Ridge Racer, the series. Ridge Racer is the 11th best game of all time? I don't think so.
Number 2, Tetris. Yeah. Interesting choice. Hard to disagree with that.
Yeah.
That's definitely one of my all-time favorites.
22 is Tomb Raider. Dude. That did not age well.
That game is hot garbage.
And then
I'm just going to say it. It's such garbage.
It's
unplayable. It's totally unplayable.
It's unplayable.
Yeah.
27 is Metal Gear Solid. Okay, that
Hold on. Tomb Raider is better than Metal Gear Solid?
Yeah, Good night.
Well, this is EG... Oh, no, this is Next Gen. I was going to say, is this one... Is the one of Gamelon on the list?
No. Top 50 games of all time in 1999.
Are you a girly man or a mega racer? Can you call people girly man now?
I don't know. Arnold Schwarzenegger did it a few years ago. Remember that? He got into some trouble. It's interesting to see what people thought would really take off back then. Like, there was a game called Blasto for the PlayStation. And there's a huge spread in here about Blasto and how great this graphics and physics engine was and how this was supposed to be like, Sony's answer to Mario 64. It's a very mascot-y type looking character.
He looks like one of the Incredibles. I mean,
he looks like one of the... Yeah, he does.
The logo and everything.
But man, this game came and went and didn't even leave a splash.
I don't even remember it.
Does anybody remember Blasto? I mean, I don't know. Now, GamePro, like I said, they were really liberal with their reviews. I mean, you can open up any GamePro, and it's not going to take you long at all to find a 5.0.
They're just handing out 5s like it's raining.
Even if it's X-Men for Genesis. Like, okay, I'm sure that's an okay game, but is it a 5.0? CNC Music Factory for the Sega CD. Apparently that's a 4.5 on the Fun Factory.
Mm-hmm.
Who knew?
People are still playing that game today and talking about it like crazy.
This is why I stopped subscribing to GamePro.
Madden's a 5 for sure.
Madden's a 5.
Yeah.
Madden 93 is another 5. How are you supposed to find a really good game in a sea of 5.0s? How are you supposed to know? Bulls versus Lakers in the NBA playoffs by EA. That's a 5.
5.
Tecmo NBA basketball. Another 5.
Mm-hmm.
NCAA basketball. 5. Bubsy. 5.
Yeah, it's 5.
Equinox. Straight 5s all the way across. Really?
Yeah, Equinox.
So that's like, what, the greatest game ever?
Everyone's still talking about Equinox to this day.
I don't know.
Genesis does.
Genesis does.
Genesis does.
What Nintendo don't.
Who's the chick on the cover here?
It's Samus, man.
Oh, that's Samus.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what she looks like.
That's what Samus looks like.
According to an artist, whoever this artist was, that's
Yeah.
what Samus looks like.
The only thing I hated about Final Fantasy VIII so much was the card game.
It's so boring.
But it was an integral part of the game. Like, you couldn't just not do it. You couldn't say, oh, this is like like chocobo breeding or something from Final Fantasy VII, where you could just, that's a side quest thing, I don't want to do it. You had to participate in this card game, and it was frustrating, and you would get a good card, and then you would lose it in a bet, and you would be like, no, why does this keep happening? And it wasn't fun. I don't know. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with Final Fantasy VIII. I loved all the old Final Fantasies up until that point, but man, 8 just... And the Guardian Forces took so long. It took forever to grind, because every time you use a Guardian Force,
it's gonna be a while.
You have to sit... You have to go make yourself a sandwich and then come back before it would be over with. Between that and the card game, it was like, dude, this game takes... It takes so much longer than it should. Like, but I love a lot of things about Final Fantasy VIII. Don't get me wrong. I really do. Heavy Metal Pinball. Another straight 5.0 by GamePro.
All right. 25 breakthrough games. A guide to the next level in video games. So this is November of 97.
Okay, November 97.
These are the games, the 25 games that are going to shape the future of video games.
Okay.
Battlezone. Burning Rangers. Die by the Sword. Blade Runner.
Stop me when you've heard of one of these.
Fire Team. Fly by Wire. Galapagos. G-Police.
Breakthrough, you
Nobody's
said.
stopping you yet. Grand Prix Legends. Half-Life.
Okay,
hey, they got one.
They got one right.
One right. I-War. Jedi Knight.
Is that
Was
part
that
of the
Knight?
Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy
That's
series?
kind of what I'm wondering.
All right.
I don't know.
I don't
It
know.
was LucasArts, so... Mask of Eternity. Messiah.
All right.
Metal Gear Solid.
Okay, so now we're up to 2.
Myth. Prey. Quake 2.
I'll give him that one.
We'll give him Quake 2.
So,
Skies. StarCraft.
all right, we'll give him
we gotta give
StarCraft.
him 10 to the 6th power. That's how I'm reading it.
Did Einstein develop that game? What's happening?
Trespasser. A lot of these are PC games, but still. Ultima Online.
All right, Ultima's big. I'll give him Ultima.
Zelda 64.
/ Ocarina.
Ocarina. That's groundbreaking. Zork Grand Inquisitor. Donkey Kong Country. Man.
Donkey Kong Country was the most heavily marketed game that I had ever experienced in my lifetime.
Insane.
They sent out VHS tapes to everybody. What's the game of the month? Game of the month, Super Metroid.
Yeah.
It got straight 9s. Should have got straight 10s.
Yeah, that's a 10.
Come on. Super Metroid.
It's a 10. Come on. Yeah. 24 meg. Wow.
24 meg.
Speaking of 24 meg games.
I remember this. I poured over this over and over and over again. Final Fantasy 3/6.
Straight 9s.
Final Fantasy 3.
Again, should be straight 10s.
Should be
just like
straight
Super
10s.
Metroid, but...
Man, what a year. 1994.
Wow.
Super Metroid and Final Fantasy 3.
And Donkey Kong Country.
And Donkey Kong Country.
And I think Mortal Kombat 2 came out that year on the Super Nintendo anyway.
I think it did.
Man, what a year to be a
Wow.
Super Nintendo fan. It was no longer a game, it was an experience. You know, a game is where, can I beat this level? Can I make it to the end of the level? And then
Right.
can I make it to the end of the next
Yeah.
level? And everything was about levels and everything like that. And then Super Metroid was just about experiencing this world. Final Fantasy 3 was about an experience. There were no levels. You didn't go into a level and go, "Where's the flagpole? Just gotta find the flagpole at the end."
Final Fantasy 3/6 has the greatest soundtrack of all time. Games or movies or anything.
I agree with you completely.
I will take the Final Fantasy 3 soundtrack up against any soundtrack to
That's
any entertainment property ever in the history of the world.
Hashtag Final Fantasy 3 challenge. We're doing it right now.
It has no filler. Every other game, Zelda, you name it, every other Final Fantasy game for that matter, every movie, every Star Wars movie, every Lord of the Rings, every movie that you think of with a great soundtrack, there's some filler in there. There's some music that's just kind of like, these just kind of ominous tones taking you from one scene to the next. And okay, it's kind of forget. Final Fantasy 3 has no filler. It is a giant soundtrack, and every track is a home run.
Every one of them.
The variety of musical styles in that game is mind-blowing. There's like progressive rock mixed with Irish Celtic music. There's an opera house with opera music that, like, by all means, that should have been a disaster. That should have been embarrassing to listen to, but I don't know, they knocked it out of the park.
Not only was it not a disaster, it's one of the greatest moments, maybe the greatest moment in the history of video games. It should have been a disaster.
Yeah. The variety of musical styles is absolutely astonishing in Final Fantasy III.
I just want to do a whole video and talk about Final Fantasy III now. I'm all worked up.
We could talk about that game for 5 hours. And meanwhile, Sega was like, "Oh, here, buy our add-on. We have another Sega CD, a 32X, and all this stuff." And I'm over here playing Final Fantasy III, and I'm thinking to myself, why on earth would I need anything else right now? I mean, so I can play Star Wars Arcade on 32X? Like, whoop-de-doo, man.
I love all these sports games where they didn't get the license. This guy plays for a team called G.
Yeah, it's G.
That's the name of the team.
Well, Ken Griffey Baseball, they got the license for Ken Griffey Jr., and somehow they got the rights for the likenesses to all these players in every team. I mean, their batting stance, the way they look, they nailed it, but they didn't get the rights to their names.
If I remember right, they even had the right batting average and everything from the year prior. So, but what you could do is you could change the name of the players, and it would save. So I went in to every single team in that game, and I went through every player, and I changed their name from whatever generic it was, Bob Jones, to Jay Buhner and Edgar Martinez. The only player that you didn't have to do that was Ken Griffey Jr. He was the only one that had the real name.
Why would you do this to yourself?
I don't know why. And then I traded the game for SimCity straight up. A kid at school. Sean Walker comes up to me at my locker room the next day, and he's like, "You traded that game for SimCity?"
SimCity was awesome.
I love SimCity.
It's a great soundtrack.
I played that game so much.
We had it on the computer, but, you get one computer in the house, and it's in your dad's office, and it's not super convenient to use it all the time. But on Super Nintendo, they made a soundtrack to SimCity that wasn't on the PC version, and it was so great.
It was phenomenal.
I love it.
Yeah.
Every track kind of gets more progressive as your city builds, and the next thing you know, you got these high rises and whatnot, and the music is like, it's wonderful.
I used to get my tax rate and everything just perfectly lined up so that I was making money every year.
Yeah.
And then I would just leave the system on and walk away.
That's how to do it.
There is one risk to doing that. It really is an earthquake. Bowser usually won't be widespread devastation. It'll cause a little fire and it will go out. It's pretty localized. Yeah. But man, those earthquakes, because it really, when you're playing the game and an earthquake happens, you just have to go to your last save point and start over. You have to. It's too much damage.
It's too much damage because you have to rebuild every road so that the fire trucks can get to all the fires and put them all out. And it's a nightmare.
So there is a risk, but it paid off for me a lot. I would do it before I go to bed at night. I would just leave it on. Wake up in the morning and I'm like, sweet, I got $140,000 now, or whatever it was. It was awesome. Or there's a trick to just...
There's a code.
I can't remember what the code is.
You hold L for a whole year.
I went back to school after I got the game, and I was talking to Jesse, and he told me about the code, and I was like, really? There's a code? And he goes, yeah, here, I'll write it down for you. And he wrote down the whole thing from memory. I mean, yeah, it's crazy. Hold L for a year and spend all your money or whatever it was.
Very convoluted.
And then he gave me the piece of paper, and I thought to myself, you're full of crap.
Yeah.
This isn't going to work. Yeah. And I went home, and I tried it, and it worked.
You get like $1 million.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
But it's more satisfying to earn the money yourself.
It is.
So
great game, great soundtrack. Soyo Oka was the composer of that music. She also did Super Mario Kart, and then she left. She stopped working for Nintendo. I don't know what she did after that.
That's a shame.
Really great
she was
composer, great music in that game.
Yeah.
So, we've talked about this before, but maybe you missed it. So 1993 in PackWatch, there is a little article on the Nintendo Gateway system, which was like this hookup to an airline would install a Super Nintendo with a little screen in there, and you could play Super Nintendo games while you're flying Delta or American Airlines or whatever. I don't know. I don't remember this. I didn't do a whole lot of flying as a kid. I don't I don't know how widespread this was. There's a tiny little picture in there. This was in 1993, and that controller looks exactly like a Wiimote. I mean, does it not? Look at that. I mean,
yeah, all the buttons are in the right place. You hold it like the same way, even as a cord coming out of the bottom.
I mean, have any of these things survived? Does anyone own any part of
that'd
this?
Be a collector's item.
That would be insane. I would love to see. This is a black and white picture. I mean, I don't know how many of these were produced. I would love to see one of these things in person. That remote, that controller is just mind-blowing to me. I mean, it's a freaking Wii remote. I mean, exactly. What are we talking about? Magazines?
Garage sales.
Garage sales? I don't know. What do you guys want to talk about? We go all over
I just want to go to garage sales.
We just want to hit the garage sales.
I just want the weather to warm up. I'm tired of this cold weather. I'm really looking forward to Final Fantasy VII being on the Switch.
Yes, I've already bought it and I've downloaded it, but they won't let me play it until March 26th.
March 26th.
It's only $16.
It's weird. Final Fantasy 9 came out on the Switch and it was $21.
Yeah.
And then Final Fantasy 7 comes out and it's cheaper. I guess it's an older game and it's cheaper.
I don't know. They're both PlayStation 1 games. I thought they were the same caliber of pricing structure.
I'm happy to pay less. I'm always happy to pay less.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to Final Fantasy 7. I haven't played that game in 20 years, and I am really looking forward.
And full disclosure, I've never played through Final Fantasy 7. So we got the PlayStation. We're 16 years old, and the way that the cards laid out, it was in your room
most of the time. Yeah.
Most of the time, and I ended up with an N64 in my room just because that's the way the cards fell. And as a result, you played a ton of Final Fantasy VII, and I played a ton of Banjo-Kazooie and GoldenEye and a bunch of other stuff. But
I mean, we both played both, but I don't know, Final Fantasy VII. I think it's such a long game that it's hard to just play for a couple minutes at a time.
I couldn't just walk in your room, sit down and in your chair, grab the controller and go, okay, Andy, I'm going to occupy this for the next 5 hours while I grind with Cloud. That's literally the only name I know in that game.
Come on, you know other names. Sephiroth.
Well, I'm talking about the heroes.
Okay, Aeris.
I don't know. I've never played
Tifa.
it. No, I don't know these things.
Yuffie.
I'm what?
Vincent.
Yeah, you're just making stuff up.
Red 13.
You're just making stuff up. Hold on, is Biggs and Wedge in the game?
I think they probably are.
Yeah.
They're in every Final Fantasy game.
They were Star Wars fans over at Square. It was pretty obvious.
Well, at least the localization team. I don't know what they were called in Japan.
I
don't know. We're bored. We're going crazy here waiting for garage sale season.
Yes.
We're pulling our hair out. We don't have a ton of content in the off season, so you just have to bear with us on these. I hope you like it.
Bye.
The end.